Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about a case that I already talked about. I think it was over a week ago now. We're going to get into that in a second. The first thing I did want to do though was a quick little personal note, nothing to do with the topic at hand of this video. So I am going to leave you a timestamp if you want to skip this part. So basically I was MIA for a week here. The reason for that is, not going to go into super detail, but your girl had to go to the ER, she had to have emergency surgery, and then I had a short hospital stay. As a hypochondriac, I can't even tell you. Anyway, that being said, that's why I was away. I'm back now. Other quick note, I was intubated when they did emergency surgery, so if my voice sounds raspy or weird, it's the intubation fucking me up. So anyway, so you guys might remember I made a video about a guy called Karmelo Anthony, who was a 17-year-old, and another guy called Austin Metcalf, who was stabbed by Karmelo Anthony. If you don't know anything about this, I'll link my prior video down below. That's when the news was more breaking. This is an evolution of what has gone on, which has been extremely controversial, hence why I also wanted to talk about it, because people online are screaming. Karmelo Anthony, charged in fatal Frisco track meet stabbing, released on bond. Karmelo Anthony, the 17-year-old charged with first-degree murder in the fatal stabbing of a teen at a Frisco track meet earlier this month, was released from jail on bond Monday. Earlier on Monday, a Collin County judge lowered Anthony's bond from $1 million to $250,000. Anthony walked out of the jail silently with a few people by his side. However, his mother and father were not seen with him. His family and the family of Austin Metcalf arrived at the Collin County Courthouse with extra security. Unfortunately, as is common in our culture, especially lately, the vitriol and, public reaction one way or the other has been intense, and threats and talk of race, war, and all kinds of insanity isn't good for, obviously, the Anthony family, said defense attorney Mike Howard. It's not good for the Metcalf family, it's not good for the peace and safety of our community. It's hard for everybody to be level-headed at a time like this, so that's where we come in, said Greg Willis, the Collin County District Attorney. It's our job to be level-headed, to be fact-based, and to follow the truth wherever it leads. This comes just days after Metcalf was laid to rest. After the hearing, both sides pleaded with the public to stop the threats, harassment, and inflammatory rhetoric towards the families involved. Now, as a quick refresher, or if you didn't see the original video or don't really know what's going on here, the story goes, and I say this because obviously I wasn't there and it doesn't seem like there were that many witnesses from what I've read online. Metcalf told Anthony that he was in the wrong tent at a track meet. It seems like the interaction escalated. Anthony told Metcalf to basically square up, to fight him, he said, "I dare you to touch me," something along those lines. Seems like Metcalf reacted in some type of way, I'm not sure. Regardless, Anthony had a knife, he took it out of his bag, stabbed Metcalf, and Metcalf died. From the moment that this news broke, it has been a complete shit show on social media in terms of people boiling it down to just race. And when I say just race, that's not to say that race is not an element, because obviously Metcalf was white, Anthony is black, so race is automatically a factor whether we want it to be or not. But people were boiling it down to just that. So people were saying that this was a racist attack, which realistically, we don't know. And we don't know a lot, which is why I think this is also so controversial, because a lot of people are projecting things that aren't there or that we can't confirm are there. So people are basically coming up with their own backstory because we don't really know what exactly occurred in that tent at the track meet. However, turning it into a race issue, if we don't have confirmation that that's what it was, is, I think, useless. And I think there's really no point in trying to come up with theories because we just really weren't there and don't know. Anthony's arrest. Anthony had been in the Collin County Jail since April 2nd arrest for allegedly stabbing and killing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a Frisco ISD track meet. According to witness statements, Anthony and Metcalf were involved in a verbal dispute, and at one point, Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Metcalf once in the chest. Anthony complied with officers at the scene and was taken into custody. While in the police vehicle, Anthony reportedly asked the officer if Metcalf was going to be okay and if what he did would be considered self-defense. Conditions of release. Anthony will be required to wear an ankle monitor and to stay inside his parents' home under adult supervision with an approved adult. He's also not allowed on social media and cannot engage with his classmates or anything related to school. He'll have to check in with the court every Friday. Since his arrest, Anthony's family hired defense attorneys Bill Clark and Kim Cole, who promptly requested that Anthony's bond be reduced. Now, another thing is also that they started, it's not called a GoFundMe, but it's the equivalent of a GoFundMe, and they raised already $500,000 last I checked. So there is a lot of support for Anthony, and this is where the online screaming starts. So to give a little bit of a summary of what's going on, if you don't feel like going on Twitter and seeing it, because honestly, how many times do I have to say Twitter is a shit show? The discussion online is as follows. Some people are mad that Anthony is being released on a bond that's not the $1 million bond, it's the $250,000 bond. So this reduction already rubbed people the wrong way because effectively what occurred here was a killing. I'm not saying murder simply because is it possible it was self-defense? Sure. It's possible. And I think that it's difficult in these types of situations to keep an open mind because when a young person dies, automatically, I think that just has such an emotional reaction for a lot of people. So immediately we run to this is what happened, right? And I think that's also why people online are coming up with theories. I don't think all of it is malevolent. I don't think all of it is ill-intentioned. I think a lot of it is for the sake of quote unquote closure. And I say quote unquote because realistically, we're outsiders. We're not the ones who need closure, right? It's the family who would need closure. Regardless, people were not happy that Anthony was being allowed to go home. A lot of people on Twitter were saying, why is a murderer being released? Why are we essentially letting a murderer off? And granted, he's on house arrest, so it's not like he's just going to be roaming the streets. But nonetheless, if you are of the mindset that this was a murder and it wasn't in self-defense, obviously it makes sense why you would be disgusted. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who, like I said before, claim that this was a race issue and therefore what Anthony did was in self-defense. I feel like there's not too much to comment on there because again, there really wasn't much noted in terms of witnesses or anyone even just being around to see body language or anything that would let us infer what was going on and what kind of interaction this was. The only things that we have right now are straight up facts of, okay, Anthony had a knife in his bag, he took it out, and he stabbed Metcalf in front of his brother. That's all we really have. Now, if we're looking at it from Anthony's point of view, if he felt threatened by the fact that Austin Metcalf went up to him and told him he was in the wrong tent, if that made him feel threatened or if the general area made him feel threatened, then could it be self-defense? Yes, it could be self-defense. The thing that I think is complicated here is, did it have to escalate to a knife, right? Because there are multiple ways of defending yourself, and granted, I guess a knife is the surefire way to defend yourself, but at the same time, and this is also something that came up on social media, people were saying, okay, well, if he was defending himself, why didn't he, throw a punch, do something that's still defense, but far less abrasive and not life-threatening for the most part, right? So obviously that's an ideal scenario, right? Because when you find yourself in whatever emergency, you're not going to have a moment to pause and be like, should I take out a knife? Should I throw a punch? What should I do, right? A lot of this is based on instinct. And also if you're in fight or flight mode, that's a whole different story as well. A lot of people don't really buy the self-defense thing because they see it as an escalation. The issue here, again, returns to the fact of we don't know how things escalated and we don't know who escalated them and how. And that makes it really difficult to fall on either side. Obviously, Austin Metcalf shouldn't have been stabbed, and obviously it's a tragedy that he died. Those are things that are non-negotiable. This is one of the ways in which social media is also relatively toxic because we can, I think, all agree that a tragedy occurred, right? Someone died. That being said, it has turned into a vitriolic kind of war online. And like I said before, all of it has been centered on race, which again, race may be a factor, but we just don't know that it is. To boil it down to Metcalf saying that Anthony was in the wrong tent just because of race doesn't make sense because we just don't know that that's the case. That being said, this is one of the times where it actually would have been helpful if there had been someone there. You know how people now have a habit of filming everything. In cases like these, this is where I wish people actually did, so at least there would be some point of reference. But as of now, the only person who really knows what happened is Anthony. Social media is all up in arms about this, and a lot of people are arguing even just on the fact that Anthony was allowed to go home. And again, everything there is being turned into a white versus black thing. So I've seen a lot of people making points, people of whatever color, I didn't go to check their profile to see, but people of whatever race are making comments, and others are responding by saying, oh, well, of course you'd say that. You're black, you're white, you're whatever. And things like this, I think, are more divisive. If we want to talk about race, there certainly is a way to discuss it in a nuanced way that doesn't just kind of like brush off every other factor of this particular news story. But people are really simplifying it and projecting and adding in their own shit, which actually wasn't there because, like I said, there are so few details. So really what this is pointing out is just not only how toxic social media can be in terms of even news stories like this, but just how easily people are willing to come to a conclusion when there is no real conclusion to come to because we have a lack of facts of evidence at our disposal right now. Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you think it was right to let Karmelo out on the $250,000 bond, whether house arrest is right. Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.